thought you could have. Questions you never thought you could have. Questions you never thought you could have. Questions you never thought you could have. In church.
Hey, welcome. So usually you hear Pastor David Gadini giving the digits and the numbers and the reason why we do the show and the explanation, but guess what? Dave isn't here. We don't know where he's at. I just sent him a text that says, "Are you okay? In a ditch, ice cream store? What are you doing?"
Maybe he just forgot.
Maybe he forgot, like I did a couple weeks ago.
We all get a couple of those, right?
Yes. So anyway, Pastor Dave, I hope you're okay. Hope you're doing well. Well, wait a second.
Look what
Here he is, folks.
The one and only.
Come on, Kent. Get it on there.
Yeah, where is it?
There it is. Look at him crawl. Crawling on his knees, begging for mercy.
Genuflect.
Yeah. God make do forgiveness. We don't.
But you don't, yeah.
Well, I joked last week and said we should have reminded people that to tune in an hour later because we move our clocks back. So maybe Dave
Is that the reason?
just got hung up in
Okay.
the clock setback.
The rest of the week has been good, but today only.
Even Tina's like, "No, Dave."
Here he is, Tina. You're good.
Kind of enjoying this. Good hands here.
She was actually thinking about, okay, how am I going to spend this life insurance policy?
Getting all excited. It's like the Powerball, you know?
She's got the lawyers on speed dial ready to go.
So they
Yes,
can't find Dave.
Already dialed it. Oh.
How long does he have to be missing before we consider him gone?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
is it 48 hours?
Yeah. Is 4 hours enough?
4, maybe an hour. The end of the show.
Yeah. Well, show's
Well,
done.
welcome back from Arizona.
Yeah.
Oh, you AZ
yeah,
here.
Yeah, it was. I'm not here. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know how it is. Like, here's a great analogy. You're out walking through the airport, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of busy, doing your thing, but then you get to the what's the thing where it's not an escalator, but it's
I like the moving
those-
sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The moving
I
sidewalk.
don't know what
you mean. The conveyor
the right
belt,
word
yes.
is.
I don't know what that word is either, but so.
The laziest
Pre-
invention in the world.
Pre that though is like getting ready to go on vacation. Then you get on that thing, and that's like being on vacation,
Yeah.
and you know it's coming to an end too soon,
Yeah.
and you're just kind of coasting along. But then you get off, and then you know how it feels
You're
when
gonna,
you
like,
do
trip,
get off.
yeah.
Like you kind of trip, and you're like stumbling into, oh my, now it's for real.
I have to walk on my
That's
own.
where I'm at right now.
Yeah, no
and I'm
doubt,
like,
no
I
doubt.
just don't. I can't get motivated to do anything. You know, I barely was like, do I even want to go to the podcast today?
Well, I'm glad that you came. Otherwise,
Hey, what about
Andrew
Andrew?
sitting here?
So, we got the power hour with Andrew here.
Yeah.
Just gonna make up a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. When'd you get back?
We flew into Midway last night.
And that's rough too.
It is.
yeah.
It is. Everything was fairly smooth though.
Okay.
You know, so
It's just the extra travel distance.
it is,
though.
and we got to drive through the city at night, see all the buildings lit up,
And that's pretty
which is
cool.
cool. you
Yeah.
know. And so yeah, it was fun. It was a good trip. We got to see people that we haven't seen for probably 3 to 4 years. You know, because since we moved here,
Mhm.
and then COVID happened and all that stuff, and people weren't traveling, and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
it was good. That wasn't our intention. We, of course, we were going to Uganda, but that got canceled. And so we're like, let's go to Phoenix. So we went to Phoenix and had a great time reconnecting and loved
And it was cold, wet, and rainy.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it was cooler, but the last 2 days were about 80. So it was perfect. You know, you could decide to wear like in the morning, a hoodie and some shorts or whatever if you wanted. And then by the afternoon, you shed it and go for some walks.
Run around naked.
You can go naked.
Mhm.
You might get arrested.
Is that like a Wells family gathering? Typical
We do.
kind of.
We do.
Yeah.
We run around the neighborhood naked. I have stories about that.
People join in. It's weird.
These are not questions you should ask.
These are not stories you should tell in church. But on a podcast, it's okay.
Sky's the limit.
We're in the studio.
So,
We're not in the
yeah,
house of the
that's
Lord
true.
right now.
Well, you mentioned it, and I know you've been sharing with us personally, like off the air, but Ebola is breaking out in Uganda here, and it doesn't really get any media coverage.
No, it
So
doesn't.
what's the latest over there?
So evidently, like, depends on who you talk to, right?
Mhm.
It's because there's the whole rumor mill. But then we've got a friend of ours who is a U.S. diplomat over there, and his family who go and visit the Hope Center, and they're like, So that's kind of our main source. There's
Yeah.
other people that
Yeah.
maybe aren't in the know as far as how Ebola works and uneducated, let's say.
Mhm.
And so they're like, no, there's basically in Mityana, there are cases. There's some people that say there isn't, but there is confirmed cases. And so if it's in Mityana, then you know that it's probably spreading as well. And if
Mhm.
it's in Kampala, which it is, it's going to be very hard to keep it down in Kampala just because everybody's on top of each other there. It's very hard to get around
Yeah.
and not touch each other.
Yeah.
So
It's not an airborne
it's not
disease,
airborne,
though, right?
it's-
How does
it's bodily fluids?
bodily fluid? Okay.
So, or just, I mean, anything. So like mass transit, right? So you get onto a van with, 28 people.
yeah,
who
it's
are
hot.
just
People are
on
sweating.
top of each
Yeah,
other. It's
yeah.
going to be hard.
Oils in the
hard to
skin, all
stop
that
that.
kind
So
of stuff. Yeah.
they've started locking down districts and locking down public transportation,
Mhm.
all these things to try and curb it and whatnot. And so I think they're doing what they can.
Yeah.
But it's the Sudan strain, which they have nothing for it. So
Okay.
there is no vaccine.
Okay,
There's
so it's yeah.
possibly some monoclonal antibodies that they can deal with some things, but a lot of times the symptoms are usually last about 21 days, or they can incubate for 21 days before you actually know. And so a lot of the symptoms are the same as like malaria. So how do you know, right?
Yeah.
And so then by week 3, you're like, oh, well, now I know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
now
and
it's too late because 50% death rate.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay. And
it's hard.
spread to other people and everything else. So you talked about like locking down and all I have is like that. Remember that old Kurt Russell movie, like Escape from New York, back like 1982 or whatever. I mean, literally, what does lockdown mean in terms of a district? Is it just they quarantine it off and go, good luck, guys? I mean,
basically, you're not allowed to move.
Okay.
So stay in your area.
Yeah.
So there's
So it is. It's
literal lockdown. The only thing that is able to come in and go would be like food goods, like delivery trucks, that type of stuff. So because you got to eat, you got to drink, and they don't have water necessarily that they can drink. So it's bottled water.
It's serious. It's severe.
So pray for them.
Yeah. Hey, let's do it. We don't do this a lot on the show, but I mean, all joking aside, we got people that are suffering that are living on $1.25 a day, a lot of them, and it's hard enough anywhere in the world, right? But but you get it there. So hey, if you're listening today and you're in the car driving, keep your eyes open right now. But
God doesn't care if your eyes are open.
Yeah, exactly. But we're just going to pray for our brothers and sisters over there in Uganda. I mean, that's scary stuff to kind of go into, and I think the uncertainty with it as well. So, Lord in heaven, we entrust them into your hands. We're so privileged here, and often so powerless to be able to do anything about these situations. But our hearts break. And God, what more can we do but to say help, save, rescue? Lord, we don't care if it's naturally through medicine and human ingenuity at its best. We don't care if it's supernaturally, but we ask for these people who are facing disease, struggle, and death, and that you turn the course on this. Keep that disease at bay. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right.
Well, hey, so did we get shout outs here to phone numbers and all that kind of good stuff? Or
not yet. We haven't. Someone interrupted our intro when he walked in.
So it kind of went off the rails. Well, hey, let's intro this up. Welcome to Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. We have a lot of people that listen to this podcast, and a lot of them are Christians. And a lot of them are Christians who are asking faith questions. They're trying to understand their faith better. They're trying to explore a deeper relationship with God. Maybe they're hung up on something, confused about something, finding doubt creeping into their faith life over something that they just can't kind of reconcile or make sense of. And this is the podcast where if we're speaking to you right now in that situation, we invite you to text those questions in. We have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who aren't Christian, who maybe also have a lot of questions about what Christianity really teaches. Maybe you've heard something, or Christianity has been kind of pictured in a certain way, or you've come across something in the media or from a friend or a grandma that just sounds kind of crazy, and it's bothering you, and you don't know what to make sense of it, and you kind of want to know the truth about it. Well, this is a question where we invite you to text your questions in. It's a podcast about just handling the stuff sincerely, honestly, straightforwardly. Not trying to sugarcoat things, not trying to sell a bill of goods, not trying to give a party line answer, but just giving an honest, transparent answer to what the Bible and Christian history has taught around certain things and what different Christian traditions might even believe on some divisive things. So if you have questions anywhere in this arena, please take a risk and text them on in, 815-314-0363, 815-314-0363. Truly anything goes in this. And we've got quite an inbox of backlog here. And we'll get to your question in time. I don't know where we at, Andrew. I mean, are we making headway here? Or is it like the U.S. mail? It's just like for everything that goes out, like 10 more comes in?
Before we get to that, I want to say thanks to Andrew for taking my place this week while we were gone in Phoenix. And Kelly noticed it too. Yeah. She says, shout out to multi-talented Andrew, tech AV, drummer, singer, guitar player, awesomeness.
Just awesomeness.
So you know what, it is so nice to not have to worry about like taking any time off, because we've got plenty of people that can backfill. We're super blessed to, oh my gosh, I just said it. Super.
You said it. You said it.
We're fortunate.
No, you stepped in it.
Did I feel your heart, Steve?
However, that's a long title for a business card, Andrew.
I know.
Yeah, it really is.
It'll have to be a scrolling electronic one.
Yeah.
Well,
just a ticker that goes along the bottom.
You know what? But shout out to you too, Steve, because there's a lot of worship leaders who've got an ego, and I mean we all do to a degree, but you never really seem to or let it get in your way, and you've done an incredible job raising people up. And we know that in Andrew's case, he was basically born talented. Right. So I mean that's an aside here, but
out of the womb drumming.
Yeah, right.
But it's cool too to see your ability to kind of walk away here and there and entrust other people with it, and it goes
because
great.
I like to walk away from things, so I want to make sure that it's in capable hands. Before I do, because otherwise it makes me look bad.
Like, man, he set this guy up. Oh no,
my goodness, this guy is horrible. Anyway, appreciate those words too.
Yeah.
And as we were talking through before the service on Sunday, we added a couple additional things that we don't usually do with the polls and adding another computer and switching
you were
things out here.
Taxed.
So it was very nice to know that the people on the tech team and other people who are just jumping in to help, that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So for the sermon, I just went and sat in the back in the coffee house and everyone did their thing.
You should have saw him, Steve. Nice. He had like the hands behind his head. He got the feet up.
Someone was fanning me.
Out. Right.
I got the real worship leader treatment.
Yes,
someone was just feeding
that's
me.
That's me every week. I have a fan.
That special lazy boy in the corner. The recliner.
Reserved parking was great.
Some elderly rubbing my feet. It's the good life.
I passed on that. I said no, thank you.
There's a ministry you can sign up for.
Yes. Well, Jesus did it, so get out.
We're looking for feet washers.
No, but it is too. Like on a not a serious note, because this is good. It's the importance of cross training all of our team. Right.
Yeah.
And so that way everybody is not just pigeonholed into one area. You can't rely on anybody else, and that's what we kind of been focusing on. So it's like, no, let's get everybody doing multiple things, so that way someone can jump in at the drop of a
Got it.
So
good
stuff.
All right, what do we got?
We've got some, I think, deep, complicated questions, which is, I think,
what's new?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I don't know if that changes anything.
Well, we've got a futon over here. I'll be over there.
Right. Some words that might need definitions, all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So let's jump in at the top here. Not a question. Whoever sent this in, they said they'd be happy to hear thoughts about free will versus predestination.
Okay.
So not a question, but maybe some comments on the differences between those, what they mean, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Something to ask for Christmas there, I think, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll be wrapped up under the tree and ready to go. There's so much, we could say about this, and you're not the first person to be hung up on how these two match. And I'm just going to kind of make the case that I don't know any of us truly know how free will and predestination align. They are both completely biblical concepts. They are both something rooted in Christian thinking and belief and formulation of stuff like that. And I think the mistake is when we take one and we ditch the other. I think you kind of need to hold them both in tension, even if it's paradoxical and even if you can't figure out kind of like how that solves a particular problem. You know what I mean? A way that I've heard, this has been the most helpful for me. When people have stopped trying to solve it like a math equation, but instead talked about it from the idea of like points of view. And if you think about everything from God's point of view, right? Everything is going to be predestination because God knows everything. God knows the future. There's nothing that's pulling the eyes over on God. So if you're kind of trying to climb in God's mind, from God's point of view, at some level, you're going to kind of have to end up in that camp somewhere going, everything is predetermined or pre-known or however you want to put it, right? In some kind of way. But the Bible, I think, far more talks from our point of view, and God talks to us at our point of view. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't talk to us like we're gods because I don't think our minds can handle it. So he talks to us like we're people. And from our point of view, we seem to have a lot of freedom. We seem to be able to make our own choices. And there's no getting around this. God holds us responsible for our choices no matter what. So that also seems to lend a lot of credence to this idea that God is giving us kind of this freedom to navigate our own destiny, if you will. And I know that isn't really answering a question, but it's a good thing that it wasn't a question. It just was happy to hear some thoughts. So hopefully that helps.
Can I throw something in? In question or a thought, I guess. But so do you think when God created us, do you think that we were intentionally set apart from him?
Can I ask you what you mean by that? Like by set apart from him? So
meaning like he wouldn't create us for us never to be able to be with him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that's the case, then I guess the way that I'm taking predestined is that we were always predestined to be with him from the time of our creation.
Sure.
Like for me, 46 years ago, 47, if you count in the womb, I'm predestined to be with him and he wants me. That's why he created me. Right.
Yeah.
But he's also given me the free will after he has created me to go do what I'm going to do.
Respond to him, love him, hate him, reject him, accept him. You got it. Yeah.
So this idea of predestination, to me anyway, now that I'm processing, thinking out loud,
absolutely,
is not so much after you're born, but before anyone even knew you. Yeah. God knew you.
Yeah. And
he probably knows in the end what's going to happen because he's eternal, right?
Yeah.
He knows beginning and end. But I also think through prayer, right, we can change his mind. So is it that, well, he knows what's going to happen, but that outcome can be changed as well through your belief in him or not in him, whether or not you are going to be with him eternally.
Yeah, I got you. And I think it's one way to navigate it, but and I'm just going to play devil's advocate though. But then, someone else is going to push back, but go, yeah, but then he would have known that you would have changed your mind and done something else.
Yeah.
So both kind of lead you, I think, into like a dark closet, going, I can't see, I don't know.
So then why pray? Right.
Yeah. And that's
it's
why
the same thing.
Right.
Concept anyway.
And I think that's the problem people get into is when they try to solve it like an equation. And in the process, they end up dismissing all the things God says does work and that we should do. So if you get someone who's just like so hung up that God is eternal and God in his foreknowledge knows everything, they lead to the conclusion, why bother? Well, you bother because exactly what you said, right? God says pray because God changes his course of direction or can be influenced, if you will, or chooses to be influenced, if that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
So why don't I just kind of take him at his word and pray as opposed to trying to kind of like crack the God code on it? Yeah.
I don't know that this correlation is going to work at all, but
let's hear it. You're thinking out loud.
Because yesterday was an election day. There's a lot of people who have the point of view of, I don't need to vote because my vote doesn't mean anything. And I'm not going to change the politician's mind anyway. I'm not going to change what's going to happen in government. But okay, if one person decides that, not a big deal. But if, 10,000 people are all thinking that individually that, oh, my vote doesn't matter. Now all of a sudden it's 10,000 votes.
And that does
start
matter.
to make a difference.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily work exactly with prayer and our relation with God, but it's kind of that same idea of, what difference can I make? What difference can my words make? What difference can my actions make?
Why does God care what I think?
Yeah. But it's like, no, the people that you impact in your life, the people that your decisions impact, the people just you come in contact with, it's going to make a difference, and there's a ripple effect. So don't minimize your own ability or your position or your words or your prayers or anything because you think that it's not important. Like, it is.
Yeah.
And God says that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go another way with that, Andrew.
I didn't know where I was going to end up.
I know.
I didn't know where it was
That's good
predestined
processing,
to
though.
end up.
Yeah, right.
I thought you were advocating for
Not
us
voting?
to, for us to vote on people on whether or not they should be saved or not. Like, for instance, Dave.
Like
well, if you
Survivor,
only get
we vote
6
them off
votes,
the island.
Well, then you got to do a better job. 'cause
What if
it
I have an immunity idol?
requires 10,000 votes for you to get in. So
Get the petition going around, right?
Oh, that would be horrible. I don't want to be a part of that world.
would you make it in? That's the question. Could you get 10,000 people to vote?
It's kind of funny with this question, though, because you guys know me well enough, and if anyone's been listening long enough, they know this, that we like to kind of get deep into theoretical and overturn things and think about things from different angles. But I think this is one of these topics where you just got to kind of take what God says at face value and go, it's almost an unanswerable question. Not that it's not fun to explore or think about. I think we should at times, but don't let that get in the way of just going, hey, you know what? God chose me before the foundation of the world. Praise be to God, it doesn't depend on me. Hey, God says to repent, and he means it, and he actually wants me to do something, so I'm going to do it, right? And not kind of go, well, I can't do anything in my power because God's determined it. Well, that's not what God said, right? Mm-hmm. Just kind of take what he says and roll.
Yeah. He called you to love thy neighbor.
Yeah.
So go love your neighbor.
Just do it. Right. Leave God to his own thoughts, and you operate in your mind, and right.
There's a reason you can't understand this.
Yeah.
We're not God.
Yeah, exactly. Mind blow.
You need a bomb button.
Just flush. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that communicates exactly the same thing, but it's close. A question about fearing the Lord and what it means to fear God. So if I'm saved, then how can I fear the Lord? What does it mean to live with fear of the Lord? What are we fearing?
Yeah. Thanks for asking this question. Appreciate what you're getting at here. A lot of people, I think, really get hung up on this because it's really a very common, like, biblical idea. You see it a lot, Old Testament and New Testament, this idea of fearing God and fearing the Lord. And it's really hard because I think we often matrix that over, like, our relationship with other people. And so if you got, like, a toxic relationship with someone who's been cruel to you, abusive to you, domineering to you, it can kind of twist this, I think, in ways that aren't intended. So I think bottom line, it comes down to this. God's a big, scary dude, right? He's huge. He's powerful. He's blinding. I mean, there is just literal power there that you cannot even fathom or behold. And that not only demands an absolute just ton of respect, but truly it's terrifying to see something of that size. I mean, I guess I can put it this way. You were in Phoenix just this past week, so you had experience with this, but you're at the ocean, you're at the coast, and the waves are big, right? And
not in Phoenix.
No, not in Phoenix. No, not too bad, man.
The wave pool at the theme park, yes.
No, but like, you ever go to the coast or something like that, and you could look at the grandeur and size of the ocean, and when it's calm, it's just beautiful, right? And you can kind of stand in awe of it. But when the waves are coming in, and I don't mean like those, like, 2-foot crest waves, but I mean, like, when the waves are really coming in, you're like, oh my gosh. But if you're still kind of on the seashore, right, it still isn't completely terrifying. But if you're out in it and you're watching that 20-foot, 30-foot, 40-foot, or even like a 6-footer coming in on you, and you're on some little rowboat or canoe, or you're out paddling, I mean, suddenly you're standing in the face of sheer power. And in your own, in the awareness of your own powerlessness, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's just that doesn't even compare to God, right? So I mean, to stand in the presence of God, this is why whenever an angel shows up on the scene in the Bible, the first thing the angel says is, "Do not be afraid." Whenever people come face to face with God, they cry out things like, "Woe is me, I'm a dead man," because they're literally in the face of that kind of presence. So it's not that God's trying to scare you. It's just kind of an is, right? And this is what's so cool about Jesus' message and the heart of Christianity is the God who is all terrifying and all powerful is someone who absolutely loves you, adores you, cares for you, and wants to protect you. And if you can kind of dare to believe that, and if you trust that that's true, suddenly that power no longer becomes terrifying in a negative sense, but terrifying in a positive sense. Now, I'll throw one more log on the fire. We've all gotten kind of like reprimanded by that scary person in our life who's a good person and has their best interest at heart. And that's scary too, right?
Mhm.
And so there is something to that with a relationship with God if you are saved, going, no, I shouldn't hold this, this relationship too lightly or treat him too buddy, even though he says I'm his friend.
Yeah.
Don't take that for granted because, dang, right? That's how I navigate that. And hopefully it helps you out.
Yeah, I like that. There's, a fear of the unimaginable power and strength that God has.
Yeah.
But when you couple that with God loves you, he thinks you're his child, you are his child. All of that power and that strength is being used to fight for you, not to fight against you.
Yeah.
So, I've heard this, a fear of God, a healthy, respect of God, of that type of stuff. It's not necessarily I'm fearful for what God is going to do to me, but I'm fearful of the sheer power and, the vast might that God encompasses.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I'm afraid someone's going to kill me or break into my house. Like, it's not that type of fear, but it's like a healthy fear of, I don't know, in my mind, like firearms or something. Like, they have this power and this capacity within them. So you should be in a certain way fearful of that power, or be knowledgeable of, okay, how am I going to wield this, and what, what's the best,
or
way
how
to
do I
be
properly
safe with
respect
this? How do I
it?
respect it? That type of thing.
When I was like, my brother and I, we were like 10-year-old kids, these pudgy, dorky little kids, and we were out on the trail on our bikes riding around, and we were coming to this one stretch, and there was like these 4 or 5 teenagers, maybe 3-4 years older than us, and have you ever had those situations where you're walking somewhere and like everything looks friendly, but you get the vibe, right? And we kind of come up on them. We didn't know these guys, and you could kind of see them checking you out and looking you over and sizing you up and stuff like that. And they just kind of started that small talk. Hey, hey, how you doing? And that's a nice bike, and we're kind of sitting here with our pudgy little legs going, can we outride these guys? And they're like, hey, let me try your bike. I like your bike. I want to ride your bike. And fortunately, we were smart enough at that age to know this is not a good move. These guys do not want to be your friends. And they kind of started surrounding us a little bit, and they started throwing like fireworks at us. And we just started pedaling hard. And, we're all sweaty and, kind of panicking. We made it. It's like, oh, we made it. But we come home, and my dad worked second shift. This is daytime. And we kind of pull into the driveway, and he sees us pull in. He sensed something was up. And he's like, what happened? And we don't really want to talk about it with Dad. He wouldn't let it go. Like, what happened? And so we kind of tell him the story. And a lot of times when you tell your dad a story like that, sometimes there's some shame with it, some embarrassment with it, because you weren't strong and you weren't. And all he said was, get in the van.
There you
go. So my brother and I get in the van, and he's like, show me where it happened. He drives over there. They weren't there. My dad starts driving the blocks in the neighborhood up and down the streets. And he's like, you tell me when you find them. We come to the end of this cul-de-sac, so it's like one way dead end kind of thing. And they're all kind of gathered in front of like someone's house, and we're like, that's them. He guns it, he roars this thing down. He screams on the tires. He flies the door open. He gets out. These guys scatter. There's no throwing fireworks at them, right? They're not going to stand up to, they literally scatter. They're jumping fences. They're running through backyards, and they split. That's the last we ever had an issue with them. But I kind of tell the story because like internally there was a thing like, that's my dad. Dad has got my back. My dad can beat up your dad. Don't we all want strong dads? right? Dads who are going to protect us, dads who are going to defend us, things like that. And if that's just a shadow of what a relationship with God is like, who says, call me father and I adopt you as my child, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But there was also probably a sense of fear there, like, oh my gosh, what is my dad gonna do?
Oh, yeah,
And
'cause,
what
you
is
know,
he capable of?
Yeah,
I,
'cause
yeah,
the
I
other-
don't know what's gonna
Right.
happen.
The other game my dad used to play is like, he would fight us with one finger, because we used to like fighting my dad. We'd tackle him and go after him, and it was all great.
Mhm.
But he had one finger and one finger only, and he would crush us every time. He would just like pressure point
yeah.
something in, and like screaming uncle on the ground. But the whole thing was even kind of rooted in love there too. I mean, it was like it was pure delight.
Yeah.
Some of my best memories, and that's why I torment my kids to
Yep.
this day.
Yep.
So.
Got to keep that cycle going.
But you know what I mean, right?
Mhm.
Right? Yeah. So
Totally.
there is all that tension. But if that tension's rooted in love, it's just flat out good.
It's good. Yeah. Yep. Your story reminded me of so on the plane right home.
Someone take you down with one finger?
No, it's 3 hours of nothing.
Yeah, at all.
And the guy next to me, who actually was from Woodstock.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, I know. So we had a great conversation.
Yeah.
About
That's
stuff.
so weird.
He was 6'7",
Oh, so the
Wow.
student is not having fun on
not
this
having fun. He's
because
in-
you're not in first class.
Does
right?
he have a
It's
middle seat?
No, he's by the window, so
Oh,
it's curved over.
yeah.
He's taller. I'm like,
His head's
I'll
kind of
switch with you, But no, good dude. He is a science teacher up north.
Okay.
And, but anyway, back to the reason I mentioned that on the return flight home, I watched a series that's on Netflix right now called Killer Sally. Don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, and I've seen it pop up in the queue, but
2 kids, and some kids were like messing with her kids. She was a bodybuilder and went straight to the house and dealt with them and the dad. So
okay.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Probably
yeah.
not the best way to handle things on her side as far as like what she ended up doing.
No, not knowing it, but,
But
go ahead.
still,
Yeah, there's
like,
something in there
the
that
same
just
thing. Like,
Don't need a trip to the
well,
hospital,
you
maybe.
shouldn't
but
have done that. So
how else will they learn?
Yeah. very interesting. So I don't know if anybody wants to go watch it.
Oh, I love it. It's worth 2 hours of your life.
It's 3 episodes.
3 episodes.
So
Okay.
limited series,
Yeah.
kind of a documentary type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay.
So I have one more question on the fearful question. So the phrase that came to my mind was, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, which is from Psalm 139. I just looked up. So I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. That's NIV. What does that mean when I'm created fearfully and wonderfully? Like, how does fearfully work in that context?
Yeah, great question. And I don't want to like say it equals this. It has to mean this, because I think it allows us, like this is what poetry does in the Bible too. It allows us to kind of explore, maybe a fuller richness of what it can mean. But I think at one basic level, to say that we're fearfully made is to kind of recognize just the glory, grandeur, complexity of the human person, body and soul, right? This is something that you cannot invent. And if you start kind of thinking about that and reflecting on that, it leads you to this pretty basic conclusion that this didn't happen by accident. There's some kind of creator who is able to make something like this. And it should lead you into kind of a sense of awe, I think, of awe of going, I can't do this. I can't even sustain this. I can't keep my heart beating. I can't keep drawing breath. Who is behind this that made me, that's leading me to kind of this place of wonder and awe, or this place of fearfully and wonderfully made? It's almost, I think, a comment on the recognition of the attitude and mindset I get when I think of the God who made me, at least at one level.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, as I look at the context of where that verse lies, it's talking about how, you knit me together in my mother's womb. Like, my frame was not hidden from you, not a secret. Like, yeah, how God saw your unformed body and created you. So yeah, it is that idea of someone with such vast, I think, knowledge of you and, of how you were put together.
Yeah.
There is that healthy fear, respect, whatever word you want to call for it.
And then if he put me together, to keep going with that, to know that I'm laid bare before him. There's no hiding.
Yeah.
right? That's what this whole psalm is kind of about, at least in part. And we all have secrets, and we'd be terrified. And there's all insecurities that we have. And we're terrified that someone might use them against us or humiliate us with them or take advantage of us in some kind of way. And to kind of go, my entire being's laid bare before God, that can be frightening.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks be to God that he's good and that he invites us to trust us with all of our secrets and insecurities, and don't have to fear that, even though it is a fearful place to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question.
So
Good
we're looking
question.
for a book recommendation here.
Okay.
And it's phrased in a way that I know that you'll sarcastically answer. Can you recommend a good theology book that looks at the differences regarding Lutheran thought versus Calvinistic views on the issues, on the usual issues? And your answer is yes, I can recommend a book. Next question.
And I hate to disappoint you on this one. I actually can't. I'm sure there's out there. I don't know of any title in specific that is trying to briefly compare, and what did it say, Lutheranism to Calvinism?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me maybe just give you some guidance. There's a lot of stuff you can read to kind of get angles on it, and systematic theology textbooks that are way too thick that you can read in their totality, compare. But I don't think that's what we're getting at here. Someone's like, I'm getting the sense, can you give me something like under 100 pages? Like an 18-page pamphlet would be ideal.
It's a side-by-side
Right.
comparison. Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure you can like Google some of the stuff and find some charts that people have done online. But let me give you an acronym to understand Calvinism, and then I will compare Lutheranism against it. And the acronym is, and it's a classic one. This isn't by me. This is kind of established within Calvinism, all right? It's TULIP, like the flower, TULIP. So it's 5 points of Calvinism. People will even talk about being 5-point Calvinists. And here's what the 5 letters stand for. T stands for total depravity. That body, mind, and soul, I am completely affected by sin. And it doesn't mean that I'm totally evil, but it means that there's no part of me that's unaffected by evil or the fallen nature. So I'm corrupt in every conceivable way. Doesn't mean I'm 100% corrupt, but it means all of me is corrupted. Does that make sense? That's T, total depravity. U is unconditional election. This goes back to the predestination question, that the reason I am saved is because God chose me of his own devices and will without any kind of merit or contribution on my part. It's unconditional. It's not conditional on what I do, right? L stands for limited atonement. Limited atonement is referring to who Jesus died for, and they will say that Jesus' death is limited in its scope of efficacy. Can I put it that way? Meaning Jesus died for the elect, not for everyone. So the people who are damned, Jesus didn't die for them. He only died for those who are going to be saved. Who are going to be saved? Those who God forechose before the foundations of the earth. I is irresistible grace. And this is all getting pretty logical in its flow, because if God unconditionally elected me, then there's nothing I can really do about it. His grace is irresistible. I'm stuck with it. He chose me. I'm going to be saved whether I like it or not. Make sense?
Yeah.
P stands for perseverance of the saints. And it's basically saying once saved, always saved, that you are going to endure or persevere in salvation, that you cannot really fall away, or at least fall away long enough that you will go from being saved to being damned. So TULIP, TULIP. That's Calvinism in a nutshell.
Those are not memorable words for an acronym.
Well, they're all phrases.
I don't know what to tell
I'm
you,
impressed
Andrew.
that you remember.
So here's how Lutheranism stacks up against it. Lutherans would say yes to T. We believe in total depravity, that sin affects every aspect of our being. U, they would also agree on, that we are saved because God has chosen us and there's nothing that we can contribute to it or merit it or have to cooperate in it with. God, I'm saved because God chose me. But then they disagree on the back 3. They would say it's not limited, but unlimited atonement, that Jesus died for everyone and all the sins of the world, regardless if someone is saved or not. They would also say it is not irresistible grace, that you can resist or reject God's grace, and therefore it is not perseverance of the saints, but that you can in fact fall away from grace and faith. So that's how it would stack up in a nutshell. There's more. I don't want to reduce complete worldviews to 5 letters, but that's enough to kind of get to a nucleus of things to get started.
So then with Calvinism then, with the tulip, and it's only for a certain sect of people, right? Then Jesus did not die for everyone, for all sins.
That's what they would say.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't agree with it.
Yeah, I don't either.
But that's what a traditional Calvinist perspective would take. And then I should qualify this now, because just like there's a lot of people who call themselves Lutheran who don't necessarily agree with everything Luther taught, there's a lot of people who call themselves Calvinist or identify with Calvinist belief systems that don't necessarily do it as well. I was talking to one Calvinist-rooted pastor actually just a couple weeks ago, and I love what he put. He said, yeah, I'm a one-point Calvinist. I believe, and his name is Don. He goes, I believe in the total depravity of Don. You know, and it's like, that's great, man.
Okay, fine.
You know, I love that.
Yeah.
But then
you know,
you're not a Calvinist.
No.
not in the purest sense, but I mean, Andrew, I would just throw it right back at you and go, do you agree with everything Luther stated?
No, but I feel like more than 20%. 20% seems low to stake your I don't know, your claim on that.
Unless,
Grant, I have no idea who this person is or anything what they said. But
right, or unless that 20% is more than what you would believe in with any
anything
other
else. That's true.
denomination.
And I think it kind of shows this too. Would you guys agree on this? That a lot of people identify with something because of like a nostalgia, a history, a background, like
Lutheranism.
well, yeah. Yeah, but you know, like I'm a mutt, right? I mean, I'm you know, pretty much Anglo through and through, except for a little Native American in there. And I really like that Native American background. I think it's kind of cool. I like to kind of explore it even a little bit. But for all intents and purposes, I'm not Native American, right? I'm not culturally, I'm not by identification, but it's something that's still kind of important to me because of some kind of like history or past that I share.
That's not your identity. I mean, like you're not focusing.
Not in the
as-
same way,
right.
but I would say the opposite. It is kind of part of my identity,
part
but
of it.
really should it be? Because I don't live that identity. I don't embrace that identity. I don't look that identity.
That's my point.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right. And I think that happens a lot in religion too. People will like be diehard Catholic, even though they don't really know an ounce of what Catholicism teaches or practice it or believe it. Same with Lutheranism, same with Calvinism. So sometimes I think, you know, I'm just trying to extend some grace here
Yeah.
to people that might identify in ways that don't really line up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing there's probably, if you took all the different belief systems and picked and choose which things you agree with, chances are those things are all going to come into one belief system, if that makes sense.
Well, are you
So you're
talking
like,
about
okay,
within
I
Christianity?
think this part of Calvinism, this part of Lutheranism, this part of, you know, Catholicism, this part of, you know, the Methodist Church. Okay, you push all those together and you're probably going to end up with some other church body. Like, I feel like it's hard to be like, well, I don't fit into any of those and I'm going to do my own. Like, you're always going to end up in some camp somewhere.
Well, and your point, Steve, too, because, you know, you mentioned it. I don't even think it's just Christian beliefs, but I think it's also other, you know, beliefs that necessarily have nothing to do with Christianity or even are counter-Christian in ways. And I think many people, most of us do this at some level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's called being syncretistic. You know, you're combining bits and pieces, almost like the buffet line, you know, and you do it unwittingly. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're picking up things that, if you thought it through, kind of have an illogical, you know,
And you
issue.
still want to belong to a group too.
Yeah.
So there's comfort in that, like claiming if you're, you know, a part of Calvinism or Lutheranism or whatever, like that you want to be a part of that group, even though everything might not, you know, fit together. It's still
Right.
it's nice to be a part of that.
I think
Yeah.
I think Kelly says it the best at 113.
Just an empty comment.
That's her thought.
Is that how you send crickets
Yeah.
through Facebook comments?
Oh, right.
Well, if we want to keep that going, I have one more here that I think will keep that strain going. Do you believe in amillennialism, postmillennialism, or premillennialism? And also, what about post-tribulation versus pre-tribulation?
Yeah, this
So
is
we're
all
just hitting all five.
right. This is all end times kind of stuff. So I'm an amillennialist, but I have deep, shall I say, sympathies. If that's not the right way of putting it, because it makes me feel like I sound sorry for it. I can see where a deep appreciation for historic premillennialism. And I got to say historic premillennialism because there is actually a division in premillennialism between dispensational and historic. I don't know how far you want me to get into this, and I don't think I'm going to, except to just describe what these terms mean and why they matter.
Yeah.
So all of them, we hear the word millennium in all of them, right? And you would think that the word millennium means million, but it's playing off the Latin word millia, which actually means 1,000. So it's talking about 1,000. Well, about 1,000 what? It's referring to something Revelation 20 refers to as a 1,000-year reign of Christ. And there's not a lot of detail to it, but you get this picture in Revelation 20 of Christ returning to earth and reigning, and it says for 1,000 years. And the fly in the ointment is not only when is this going to happen, but is this meant to be a picture of like eternity, new heaven and new earth? Or is this something that happens before the new heaven and new earth, where it's almost like kind of a paradise on earth? So you're not like the new heaven, new creation yet, but it's really, really
So we're
good.
going to sing Kumbaya for 1,000 years. with
You
Jesus.
got it.
Okay.
You got it. So all these words like pre-millennium, post-millennium, right? It's asking the basic question, when is Jesus going to return in relation to the millennium? Because what everyone has agreed upon is that Jesus is going to return from heaven to judge the living and the dead. So a premillennialist is going to say that Jesus is going to return before the millennium and then set up a 1,000-year reign on earth. A postmillennial is going to say that we're going to enter some kind of golden millennial age before Christ's return. And an amillennial says, I don't think there is going to be a literal 1,000 years. I'm taking the whole thing metaphorically and figuratively. That's why they're like amillennial, meaning not a millennium. And that's kind of what it's getting at. So it's really a question of what are we to expect in the future? Is the world getting better? Is the world going to get worse? Or is there a different way of thinking about it? And that's the heart of it right there. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I've always I've heard those thrown around a lot, like premillennial, postmillennial, and I'm always like, I don't know. I don't know what that means.
The rapture wasn't mentioned in that as well.
Well, that would be
could
the pre and post tribulation.
Yeah, so pre and post tribulation, because within Revelation, there's this idea that there'll be often, if you want to use it to literal numbers, a 7-year period of time that's going to be basically hell on earth. So if the millennium is 1,000 years of heaven on earth, the tribulation is 7 years of hell on earth. Is that meant to be understood in its very literal period of time before Christ comes again? Or is it to be understood more metaphorically? And that would be more of an amillennial position. As an amillennial, I believe that the millennium and the tribulation are each referring to a metaphorical or it's not a literal numeric period of time, but that they're referring to a general period of time. And I actually believe that they're referring to the exact same time, that the millennium and the tribulation are occurring simultaneously. And again, I don't want to go too many steps down a path that might not be being asked. So to say pre-trib, post-trib is almost to me asking the wrong question.
A tribute.
Sort of. Or to put it another way, I actually believe that we're in the tribulation right now. And I also believe that we're in the millennium right now.
To me, they're one and the same.
Yeah. It's that perspective thing.
And
Two sides.
When did those times start in your mind? Like, is that starting with Jesus coming to earth? Is that starting with humanity Or is
No,
it,
no, no.
you know, 50 years ago? Oh, now we're in this time.
No,
Like,
great question. Great question. I believe that it's referring to the period of time between Christ's first and second coming.
Yeah.
So if you mark its beginning as when Christ more or less raised from the dead and ascended into heaven, and it's going to exist until Christ returns, we are going to see tribulation on earth, and we are going to see the kingdom of God on earth. And so I think good and evil are both progressing on earth. I think as believers, we're going to face them both. And that battle continues until Christ comes again to give the final.
And you're, just to be clear, you're not saying that we will eventually, that we already are.
You got it, Steve.
Correct.
Yeah, and have been, and our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents, or and all the way back, have been. That's why I think Peter in Acts chapter 2 will refer to this time period as the last days. He quotes Joel, which is seems to be this end time prophecy of when Christ comes again. And in Acts 2 at Pentecost, he goes, this is to fulfill what's happening now. We're in the last days.
Yeah.
That was 2,000 years ago. We said we're in the last days. So we're still in the last days.
It's like that coach during practice. Just one more. We're going to do this one more time.
Right,
Just
right.
one more time. One more day.
You love wind sprints. Just one more. So we were over at Ethereal. Great little coffee shop for those who are listening that don't know it, in Woodstock, Illinois. And, Riley and I were up there just hanging out. And they're a chocolatier as well. They make these amazing chocolates. So we got this thing where, like, I'll get her a mystery chocolate, and she's got to kind of guess the ingredients because she likes to bake and cook and stuff like that. So I give her this one, and she really liked it. She couldn't guess the ingredients at all, but it ended up being like it was pumpkin pie puree, pumpkin pie spices, and espresso. Well, she had it. And then we had to go to I had to drop her off at basketball practice after it. She comes home from basketball practice going, I don't know what was in that thing. I was doing wind sprints and I liked them. It was like, one more, come on, one more. Because she doesn't drink coffee at all. And
Probably THC.
Yeah, probably THC. So we know the secret for the team. All the
Right.
basketball
Well,
is going to be
all the NFL does, so why not?
Yeah, have them up on all the legal steroids.
Yeah, right.
Wouldn't that have the opposite effect, though? Honestly, would that be the most mellow team?
So here's what I've heard from a lot of NFL players, knowing some NFL players.
Yeah. How many
Is that-
NFL
I was like,
players
a
do you know?
lot?
I'm kind of intrigued here on that.
I've got about 4.
Okay.
And so basically it's a focused, because there's different varieties that you can make, of course, but a lot of them are just smoking weed, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it helps them slow the game down because everything is so quick. So their bodies are conditioned to do the same thing, rep, right?
Mhm.
But in your mind, it's actually slowing things down so that it makes it easier for you. I don't know if it's true.
right.
I don't
But that's
play in
what
the
they're
NFL.
saying.
That
Yeah.
is the opposite of what espresso would do for
But
you.
maybe I should have smoked more than I could have been in the NFL.
NFL. That was holding you back.
You missed it.
That was it. Dang it.
If only the laws were there in place.
I would love to see you as a center on
No.
a football field. First of all, you wouldn't be able to see you
Worked well
at
with
all.
Cheech and Chong.
I will tell you that
right.
I played in the Nebraska Indoor Football League. You did not know this.
I didn't know that.
know.
Yeah.
And this was against a lot of Husker football players. And I was a running back and a kicker.
Okay.
And so I remember I wore contacts, or I wear contacts. My helmet wasn't, so we got these uniforms, right? So this is indoor football. It's rough. You're going to get pounded.
Arena football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I catch the ball and I'm running out to the sideline and 2 guys just come up and frickin' drill me.
Yeah.
My contacts popped out. I could not see anything. This was the only game my in-laws came to see.
Totally right.
And I'm like, can you just run home and get some new contacts for me? And Barbie's like, the game's going to be over by then. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess one playing out.
God, it's so hard.
You
Your
can't get
contacts.
field goals either when you can't see, right? So
You're like, someone just point me in the direction.
Knock the contacts out of them.
I've never heard of that. I've heard
That's a
shoes coming off, but
that was a hit.
Contacts is
I
a
got
lot.
my bell got
that's
rung.
true.
It was,
Yeah.
but I love contact.
Yeah.
So anyway, hey, before we get off this topic, Kelly says, so you don't believe in the rapture?
Not in the way it's talked about today. The way that the rapture is talked about today in certain strange of evangelical Christianity is that there is going to be this secret moment that no one really knows, when every believer in Christ is going to more or less just disappear. And what it means, they're going to be taken up to heaven. And they're going to be taken up to heaven by a secret return of Jesus. So God, like Jesus is going to come back incognito, and he's going to kind of just everyone up. And that's to get them out of that tribulation period, which is a 7-year hell on earth. If you remember, like Left Behind came out, the novels back like 20 years ago. There are some movies, I think Nicolas Cage and Kirk Cameron and stuff did movies on it. That's kind of what that's getting at right there. No, if that is your interpretation of the rapture, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's what the Bible teaches. I think what 1 Thessalonians 4 teaches, in which these rapture ideas are based, is that when Christ comes again to judge the living and the dead, he is bringing with him the entourage in heaven, which are those who have died in Christ, and that we who are alive at that moment will meet him in the air. But we will meet him in the air to welcome him in, and then we come back to earth with him. So the idea is he's coming into the city. Think like Palm Sunday, right? The king is coming. We go out to meet him, to be that ushering group, joining him, coming to earth. So it's not to avoid a 7-year period of trial and tribulation. I think Revelation speaks too much to the other, that we are going to have to endure it. And that's the message of Revelation. You are going to face tribulation. So overcome, conquer, win, or Nike, or Nike, to use the Greek word, which is the key word in Revelation. Revelation endorses Nike, and to hang in there.
The other way around. Now they didn't even know.
Right. So yeah, Kelly, hopefully that helps you out. And I could recommend some books to you, Kelly. I know you're a reader and you like to dig into this. I'll just give one title to all of our listeners. I think the best thing I've ever read on these different views of the millennium, and then by extension the rapture, is it's a book called The Meaning of the Millennium. It's probably about 25 years old now, but it's one of these point-counterpoint books where they take a historic premillennialist, a dispensational premillennialist, a postmillennialist, and an amillennialist. Each of them write a short, like maybe 30-page article arguing their point of view. And all of them are rooted in the Bible. All of them love the Lord. All of them are Bible believing, okay? And then the other 3 are invited to counterpoint it. So you get to read everyone's argument from their own mouth, and also the critiques. And it does a couple of things. One, it gives you a lot of appreciation for different belief systems that you might have rejected. 2, it doesn't allow you to easily dismiss other belief systems because you're getting it through a skewed perspective. And 3, it really kind of broadens your horizon about how people think and approach the Bible and the assumptions that they carry that lead to the conclusions that they often make. It's a great book. It's probably about 200 pages in total. It's I'll say it's a quick read, but it's not really true. It's a good read.
You're probably going to have to do a lot of introspective thinking while you're reading.
Yeah, especially if you're unfamiliar with it, but it's a clear read. It's not written in a lot of technical language. And there's a lot of Bible passages they're going to give that if you want to do the heavy lifting of like looking them up and not just taking their word for them.
What was the title of it again?
The Meaning of the Millennium. Or The Meaning of Millennium. I don't know if the other "thes" in there. I can't even give you an author. I can give you some of the contributors, but it's not one author. It's an editor. Yeah. But great book if you want to get into that.
I had 2 thoughts come to mind. I can remember one of them. I can't remember the other. I recently started watching the show Gotham on HBO, and that's how I imagine the tribulation period.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense. It's just every time you think, oh, maybe someone will do the right thing, no one does the right thing. Everyone is out for themselves, and just so much death and murder and betrayal and everything. I'm like, this living in Gotham is literally living in that period of just like, it seems like a reign of evil.
Is that, you said that's HBO or is what?
Yeah,
shoot. Okay. Well, Andrew, come on, man. Watch party.
I know. I mean, there's like 6 seasons of it, so
well,
it'll take a while.
Let's block out 72 hours.
We can just do an entire week.
So have you seen Samaritan on Amazon Prime?
That's the Stallone one, right? Yeah.
It's pretty good.
I like that.
Yeah. And then another one that's really good, which I didn't think I was going to like, but Father Stew.
That was great.
Fantastic. I loved it. And I will say that right now it may be my favorite one.
Yeah,
it was good.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought the other thought. Quite a few of these questions today have been dealt some with end times, heaven, Judgment Day, all that type of stuff. A lot of stuff that's in Revelation. If you want to learn more like the Nike word, that type of stuff about Revelation, Dave, you're doing your 9 a.m. Bible study on Sunday mornings on Revelation.
Yeah,
And you
we're-
can listen to that on, if you go to the FOF Plus page, there's a podcast called The Bible in Context. And the most recent like season of that is this study in Revelation. So
yeah.
it's
Thanks
a lot
for
of good
plugging that.
stuff.
Yeah, fellowshipoffaith.org is where you can pick that up. And then, as you said, the FOF Plus page. And this isn't to overturn and uncover every single verse that you're going to find, but it's like, how do I kind of look at this as a whole and just kind of make sense of it in broad strokes in the cultural worldview of its day? Yeah.
All right. Well, it looks like we got to wrap things up. So Gene has one last comment. Can't wait when Jesus returns. And then that's where I don't know what he's going to say the rest of it, but we can't either. We can't wait for Jesus' return. So
I think he was raptured. I think that was the end. He just didn't get to finish his thought.
well, until then,
Which means we're in trouble.
yeah, we're stuck. Oh no.
well, until then, Gene, we'll maybe see you next week unless Jesus comes. And then if he does, great. So
Yeah.
anyway, have a great week, everyone.
Yeah. God bless, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Questions you never thought you could have. 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 Team Church.